Welcome back to our channel. Today we're taking you on a deep dive into the extraordinary life of Spencer Tracy, the legendary actor whose intense performances and captivating screen presence redefined Hollywood's golden age. Spencer Tracy wasn't just another leading man. He was an absolute force of nature, a performer who exuded both depth and subtlety in a single scene, leaving audiences spellbound by his commanding roles and unparalleled versatility. Critics marveled at his talent, fans adored him, and fellow actors longed to match his effortless realism on screen. But behind the confident, award-winning exterior lies the real Spencer Tracy, an individual grappling with personal demons, private struggles, and, according to some, a single night of terror so shocking that it might have unraveled his entire public image if it had ever become front-page news. Despite his reputation for reliability on set and quiet self-assurance in front of the camera, Tracy was not without controversy. His life was marked by conflicts, both internal and external, and shaped by scandals that occasionally threatened to overshadow his illustrious career. From a string of romantic entanglements with leading ladies to episodes of binge drinking and emotional collapse, he lived on a precarious edge. That precarious balance between the brilliant artist and the troubled man is precisely what makes his story so compelling, and it remains a core reason why modern audiences and film scholars continue to find him as fascinating as ever. Today we'll examine every chapter of Tracy's life. His childhood shaped by strict religious devotion and a complicated family dynamic, the ups and downs of his family background, a career that soared to unprecedented heights, culminating in 2 back-to-back Academy Awards, an achievement few actors have ever matched, the scandals that punctuated his journey, often involving tumultuous bouts of alcoholism and unpredictable behavior on set, the tragic disintegration of his marriage to Louise Treadwell, his numerous other relationships, most famously his lengthy bond with Katharine Hepburn, and finally the circumstances surrounding his death and the reverberations his passing left on Hollywood. By the end of this in-depth exploration, you'll have a complete picture of a man whose off-screen life was every bit as dramatic as the roles he portrayed on the silver screen. 1. Childhood Spencer Bonaventure. Tracy was born on April 5, 1900, into a household teetering between 2 religious traditions and 2 distinct visions of what an American family ought to be. His father, John Edward Tracy, came from a strong Irish Catholic lineage stretching back to ancestors who escaped the Great Potato Famine in Ireland. They had eventually settled in Wisconsin, benefiting from the expansion of the railroad industry during the late 19th century. The Tracy family once prospered from this burgeoning sector, which not only granted them a relatively comfortable lifestyle, but also instilled in them an unwavering sense of faith and hard work. Spencer's paternal grandfather and father alike were staunchly Catholic, so much so that 2 of John's sisters became nuns, an indicator of just how integral religious devotion was in that branch of the family tree. Carolyn Brown, or Carrie, Spencer's mother, descended from a well-established American Presbyterian family. Her ancestry stretched back to the colonial era, and her relatives had accumulated considerable wealth through the grain milling business. Consequently, Carrie's upbringing was markedly different from John's. She came from a line of genteel upbringing, country clubs, and refined manners, with a strong emphasis on education and social grace. Yet Carrie's family strongly opposed her marriage to an Irish Catholic, seeing it not just as a breach of religious boundaries, but also a potential social misstep. This disapproval cast a shadow on the newlyweds, complicating an already delicate situation as they tried to merge two distinctly different backgrounds. From the outset, tension existed between John and Carrie. While their love for each other was real, they clashed over finances, faith, and the way they intended to raise their children. As a result, the stability of their home was fragile. When John lost a promising job due to his troubles with alcohol, the family was forced to move multiple times in search of more stable employment. These moves uprooted young Spencer and his older brother, Carol, from any sense of permanence, leaving them adrift in a series of new neighborhoods. Sometimes they stayed in John's mother's home. Other times, they moved in with Carrie's relatives. Spencer observed everything: the ephemeral peace when his father stayed sober and the abrupt chaos when he relapsed. Despite the underlying tension, Spencer's childhood wasn't devoid of warmth. There were moments of familial unity, especially during the times when John managed to keep his drinking in check. Carrie's influence introduced a softer, more refined element into Spencer's upbringing. She encouraged reading, musical evenings, and small performances in the house, activities that seemed to awaken Spencer's budding performance skills. Meanwhile, Carol was more than just an older brother. He was a close friend who joined Spencer in small mischiefs, shared chores, and witnessed every family drama by his side. As a boy, Spencer showed signs of restlessness. He gravitated toward the rough and tumble kids in each new place they lived. He found their games and dares far more exciting than the orderly quiet of his mother's social circle. It was during one of these new beginnings in Milwaukee that Spencer's grandparents handed him a nickel and sent him off to watch a silent film, an experience that changed his life forever. Awestruck by the shimmering images on the screen, he became enamored with the idea of storytelling, of slipping into different characters and capturing an audience's imagination without speaking a single word. Back at home, with no radio or television to distract them in that era, families often entertained each other through music, conversation, or small theatrical skits. Sensing their younger son's enthusiasm for showmanship, John and Carrie, along with neighbors and relatives, indulged Spencer's desire to perform. He learned basic magic tricks, put on amateur vaudeville bits, and even organized basement shows for neighborhood children. These small acts formed the earliest seeds of his eventual career, suggesting a boy who not only loved the spotlight, but also had a natural flair for commanding it. Formal education, however, presented a greater challenge. Spencer's restive nature clashed with the disciplined structure of the Catholic schools he attended. At one point, he tried transferring to a public school but flunked out, prompting his parents to send him back into a stricter Catholic environment. Initially, he toyed with the notion of becoming a priest, perhaps influenced by the deep reverence his father's family held for the clergy. But that calling clashed with his sense of adventure, and as he would later discover, his love of the stage. The break that truly changed the course of his life came with World War I. Although the war was nearing its end, Spencer enlisted in the Navy, seeking an escape from the monotony of school and a taste of the discipline and camaraderie that only military life could offer. Though he never saw direct combat, the Navy introduced him to rigorous schedules, physical training, and an expanded worldview. After his discharge, Spencer found himself at a crossroads. John, still harboring hopes for his son's respectable future, pushed him to gather enough credits for college, where Spencer initially planned to study medicine. Yet once confronted with courses in public speaking and drama, he discovered an irresistible pull toward performing arts. The applause, the bright lights, the challenge of playing different characters, these all resonated far more deeply with him than scalpels and anatomy texts. This realization was the final ingredient that set him on the path to an acting career. Second family. While Spencer Tracy's unique blend of discipline and showmanship took shape during childhood, the family dynamic that surrounded him also had a formative role. His father, John Edward Tracy, epitomized the dichotomy of devotion and self-destruction. Deeply Catholic and fiercely loyal to his family, he also struggled with the temptation of alcohol. This struggle not only cost him jobs but forced the entire family into a series of relocations, leaving them in a near constant state of flux. Nevertheless, John's eventual success in wrestling his drinking problem into submission, at least for intermittent periods, brought temporary calm and a sense of pride to the household. Spencer's mother, Caroline "Carrie" Brown, provided a stark counterpoint to John's tumultuous pattern of highs and lows. Raised with Presbyterian sensibilities and a measure of inherited wealth, Carrie valued order, education, and social decorum. Her family, the Browns, had made their fortune in grain milling, a business that benefited from the growth of agricultural industries in the Midwest. Yet despite her sophisticated background, Carrie found herself, in many ways, an outsider within her own circle due to her marriage to an Irish Catholic. The tension between Carrie's family and John colored Spencer's upbringing, instilling in him a nuanced understanding of class differences, religious divides, and the complexities of forging unity despite such challenges. At the heart of this familial tapestry was Carol, Spencer's older brother, a confidant and partner in most of his childhood escapades. Carol provided the sense of continuity that Spencer otherwise lacked, given the constant upheaval. The two boys remained close through each relocation, each new school, and each simmering conflict at home. Carol more than once served as a buffer between Spencer and John, particularly during John's drinking bouts, shielding his younger brother or helping him sneak out to see friends. It was not uncommon for the Tracys to experience dramatic shifts in fortune. The family's economic stability fluctuated. Sometimes, after a sober streak, John secured a decent job, and they lived in a comfortable home with ample space. Other times, if John succumbed to alcohol again, everything fell apart, and they were forced to rely on extended relatives, bridging personal pride with financial necessity. Through these ebbs and flows, Spencer absorbed an acute sense of life's unpredictability and the need to remain adaptable, qualities that would serve him well on stage and screen. Yet for all the tension, there was an undertone of devotion in the Tracy household. Family prayers, Sunday Mass, and grace before meals were ironclad traditions, reinforcing Catholic values as the backbone of daily life. Spencer internalized many of these values, from the notion of guilt and penance to the idea of unwavering loyalty to loved ones, traits he would exhibit in both public and private relationships. Ironically, these same religious convictions later complicated his personal life, especially when it came to his inability to formally divorce or extricate himself from a marriage that was, in all but name, over. In short, Spencer Tracy's family life was neither wholly loving nor wholly dysfunctional. It was a rich tapestry of contradictions. The friction between John and Carrie, the mixture of paternal warmth and paternal instability, the interplay between Catholic and Presbyterian beliefs, and the protective presence of Carol all converged to shape a young man who was innately empathetic yet restless, devout yet questioning, and fundamentally prepared to seek out a stage where he could explore, through performance, the full spectrum of human emotion. This complex background set the scene for a career that would echo those very contradictions and tensions in roles that spanned from priests and moral crusaders to men haunted by guilt and strife. 3. Career early theatrical steps. Spencer Tracy's foray into acting began as a simple spark, his youthful fascination with silent films and small magic shows. But it ignited into a blazing ambition once he enrolled in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, AADA. At AADA, he immersed himself in theater craft, studying voice projection, stage movement, and the fundamentals of character development. Although the training was intense and the competition fierce, Tracy's raw talent became evident. He learned to harness his restive energy and comedic timing, delivering lines with a depth that belied his inexperience. Along the way, he formed valuable friendships, some of which would later translate into professional collaborations. Upon graduating, Tracy joined various stock theater companies, taking on minor roles in small towns. At times, he performed multiple shows a day, covering everything from drawing room comedies to light musicals. These stints were not glamorous. He rarely made more than a modest wage, but they offered an invaluable crash course in adaptability. With each new part, he refined his instincts, learning to read the crowd, react to fellow actors, and perfect the subtle gestures that made his characters feel genuine. A breakthrough arrived when he was cast by George M. Cohan, the legendary showman known for his patriotic musicals and high-energy productions. Appearing in plays like Yellow and The Baby Cyclone, Tracy earned praise for his ability to infuse comedic roles with sincerity and dramatic roles with a touch of humor. Critics began to mention him in favorable terms, noting his versatility and relaxed stage presence. Buoyed by this momentum, Tracy soon caught the attention of Hollywood talent scouts eager to find fresh faces who could transition from stage to screen, particularly with the coming of sound film, which demanded actors with strong vocal delivery. Entering Hollywood Fox Film Corporation extended a contract to Tracy, and his cinematic debut came with Up the River, 1930, a John Ford-directed comedy set in a prison. Notably, the film also featured a then-unknown Humphrey Bogart, signaling that this was a unique crossroads moment for rising stars. Tracy's performance revealed a glimmer of his potential, though the role itself was modest. Nevertheless, Fox saw enough promise to keep him on. Over the next few years, however, Tracy found himself churning through a series of B-movies, low-budget productions with lackluster scripts that often failed to attract large audiences or critical acclaim. The mismatch between his potential and these subpar roles led to frustration, but ironically, it also forced Tracy to hone his craft under constant pressure. He had to learn how to elevate weak material, how to deliver lines convincingly in even the most formulaic plots. A critical stepping stone emerged in 1933 when Tracy starred in The Power and the Glory. While not a massive box office success, the film showcased his ability to carry a more weighty and introspective narrative. It was here that his trademark realism began to shine, hinting that he might excel in more substantial roles. Still, he remained somewhat undervalued at Fox, often at odds with studio executives, especially when his struggles with alcohol began to interfere with production schedules. The MGM era and meteoric rise Tracy's frustration with Fox ended when influential producer Irving Thalberg intervened, bringing him to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM. Thalberg believed in Tracy's capacity for greatness and wanted to cast him in roles that tapped into his depth, rather than confine him to breezy comedies or gangster flicks. This transition to MGM was a turning point that launched him into a string of successes. He made waves in Fury, 1936, playing a man wrongfully accused of a crime, and then in San Francisco, where he portrayed a steadfast priest opposite Clark Gable and Jeanette MacDonald, a performance that landed him his first Oscar nomination. By this point, audiences and industry insiders began to grasp the intensity and nuance he could bring to a role. His big triumph arrived with Captains Courageous, 1937, where he portrayed a kind-hearted Portuguese fisherman who mentors a spoiled boy. The film required Tracy to adopt an accent and endure physical demands at sea, conditions he reportedly detested, but his performance was so convincing that it garnered him his first Academy Award for Best Actor. He followed that success with Boys Town, 1938, playing Father Edward J. Flanagan, earning him a second consecutive Oscar, an extraordinary accomplishment shared by only a handful of actors in cinema history. During these early MGM years, Tracy cultivated a naturalistic approach. He was known for doing minimal rehearsals, preferring spontaneity and authenticity in front of the camera. This tactic set him apart from many of his contemporaries, who often adhered to more theatrical, over-rehearsed acting styles. Tracy's manner seemed to live the role. Colleagues recalled how he would quietly observe people on set or on the street to catch real-life gestures and vocal inflections, weaving them seamlessly into his characterizations. Peak stardom and key collaborations. From the late 1930s to the 1940s, Tracy seemed unstoppable. He racked up 9 total Academy Award nominations throughout his career, dominated the box office, and appeared alongside numerous leading ladies. Some of his on-screen partnerships were short-lived yet memorable, such as those with Joan Crawford or Myrna Loy. However, none would become as legendary as his partnership with Katharine Hepburn. Their pairing first set sparks flying in Woman of the Year, 1942, a witty comedy that inverted gender roles, portraying Hepburn's character as a high-powered journalist and Tracy's as a more grounded sports writer. The two actors possessed an electrifying chemistry that felt equal parts intellectual and romantic, a dynamic that would define their subsequent 8 films together, from Adam's Rib to Pat and Mike. Even as Tracy aged and faced worsening health issues, he sought out roles that continued to challenge him. In Father of the Bride, 1950, he balanced humor with tenderness, playing a bewildered dad grappling with the emotional upheavals of his daughter's impending marriage. This lighter fare demonstrated that he could move gracefully between comedy and drama, further expanding his already impressive range. Later, in the 1961 courtroom drama Judgment at Nuremberg, Tracy delivered one of his most powerful performances, playing a judge who wrestles with the ethical complexity of prosecuting former Nazi officials. His final major project, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, released shortly after his death, was equally groundbreaking, an examination of interracial marriage that forced many American audiences to confront their own prejudices. By the 1950s, Tracy was widely acknowledged as one of the greatest actors of his generation, if not of all time. He had proven his ability to handle comedic timing, fatherly warmth, moral anguish, and righteous fury, all delivered with a disarming, understated style that never felt forced. Colleagues lauded his work ethic and self-assured calm in front of the camera, though many also witnessed how that calm could give way to tempestuous moods once filming ended. Nevertheless, his cinematic output stands as a testament to his deep commitment to craft. In 1999, the American Film Institute officially recognized this legacy by ranking him as the 9th greatest male star of classic Hollywood cinema. That accolade, which came decades after his passing, reflected how thoroughly he had reshaped Hollywood's expectations of screen acting. For Scandal. While critics consistently praised Spencer Tracy for his elegance on screen, he battled a formidable demon in his private life, alcoholism. This challenge, partly inherited from the paternal side of his family, was both cyclical and devastating. He might remain sober for months or even years, only to plunge into a binge that ended in self-destruction. During his tenure at Fox, these episodes became especially problematic, resulting in missed call times, production interruptions, and significant cost overruns. In one incident, the studio took the extraordinary step of suing him for a substantial sum, citing his absence and erratic on-set behavior as the direct cause of shooting delays. Tracy's drinking could lead to alarming behavior. Rumors circulated about him smashing bar glasses or inciting brawls late at night in upscale hotels. As he grew in stature, these stories became less about a struggling newcomer and more about a major star creating havoc wherever he drank. Some accounts even involve law enforcement. In certain episodes, Tracy wound up detained in local jails for public intoxication or disorderly conduct, only to have the studio's fixers quietly step in and resolve the matter. These cycles of indulgence and regret inflicted a heavy toll on his emotional well-being, feeding into a guilt complex that he, deeply rooted in Catholic teachings, found nearly impossible to shake off. Friends and co-stars weren't immune to the collateral damage. On at least one occasion, Katharine Hepburn found herself the target of Tracy's alcohol-fueled rage, an incident that reportedly ended in a physical scuffle, leaving them both deeply shaken. Remarkably, even after such incidents, those close to him often witnessed how he could regroup for his next call time, step onto a set with unwavering focus, and deliver a mesmerizing performance. That ability to compartmentalize, keeping personal chaos hidden behind a public veneer of calm, only heightened the fascination surrounding him. Despite several genuine attempts at sobriety, including checking himself into hospitals under pseudonyms, detox programs, and the stern advice of doctors, Tracy never fully escaped the hold of alcoholism. His dark nights of the soul continued to reoccur, often triggered by stress or self-reproach. The fact that he was a devout, albeit conflicted Catholic, added yet another layer of torment. He saw drinking as a moral failing, compounding the psychological toll of each relapse. This internal war, between his sincere desire to reform and the relentless pull of addiction, emerged as a prominent feature of his life story, underscoring the tragic irony of a man who could enthrall millions while battling the specter of self-destruction behind closed doors. 5. Marriage central to Spencer Tracy's personal complexity was his marriage to Louise Treadwell, a union founded on romance and ambition but fraught with heartbreak. The couple wed in 1923, when Tracy was still making ends meet through stage work, eking out a modest living. Louise, an aspiring actress herself, initially shared his dreams, even though they often faced financial strain. The early years were marked by optimism. They had a son, John, and later a daughter, Susie, and they envisioned a stable future buoyed by Tracy's growing success on stage. This sense of optimism shattered when Louise realized that John was deaf. Fearing Tracy's reaction, especially given his devout Catholic beliefs and predisposition toward blaming himself, she withheld this realization until the boy was over a year old. When the truth came to light, Spencer's reaction was one of torment. Viewing his son's deafness as a form of divine punishment for his own perceived sins, he became emotionally remote at home. Rather than offering comfort, guilt appeared to paralyze him, complicating his interactions with Louise and John. Though they had another child, their daughter Susie, the marriage began to show strain under the weight of unspoken resentments, religious guilt, and Tracy's intensifying career. A further wedge emerged from Tracy's chronic infidelity. Throughout the early 1930s, as he secured more film roles and spent longer hours on set, rumors abounded that he was dallying with co-stars and flappers on the rise. By 1933, Louise and Spencer decided to separate informally, though they did not finalize a legal divorce. Tracy's Catholic convictions played a significant role in this choice. He couldn't bear the thought of official dissolution. Meanwhile, Louise herself was preoccupied with caring for John, who needed special schooling and resources. In an effort to help, she founded the John Tracy Clinic, an institution devoted to assisting parents of deaf children, thereby channeling her heartbreak into a meaningful cause. In many ways, the marriage existed in limbo for the rest of Tracy's life. Publicly, they remained united by name, and Louise continued to appear at key family and social functions, maintaining a semblance of dignity and familial unity. Privately, they led separate lives, with Tracy moving through a series of affairs and Louise devoting her energies to philanthropy and child rearing. Though complicated, this arrangement might have been a quiet concession to practicality. Louise provided the stable family image that Tracy in his studio desired, while he offered financial support and, in his own way, still respected her role as mother to his children. By not divorcing, both avoided a public scandal that would, in those days, have irreparably tarnished Tracy's brand in the eyes of conservative moviegoers and might have ignited a tidal wave of negative press. Despite emotional distance, the two never truly broke ties. In the final years of Tracy's life, Louise occasionally visited him, coordinated with doctors regarding his health, and continued to offer moral support. He, in turn, admired her dedication to the John Tracy Clinic, acknowledging how her devotion provided a vital service that would help countless families facing challenges similar to their own. This curious blend of estrangement and respect gave their relationship a paradoxical tenderness. By the time of his passing, their bond, while fractured, still held traces of the loyalty and fondness that had once fueled their youthful vows. 6 other relationships. Spencer Tracy's private life was further complicated by a series of affairs with actresses and industry figures. Even early in his career, rumors swirled that he was romantically involved with women like Loretta Young, Joan Crawford, Ingrid Bergman, Jean Tierney, and Myrna Loy, all of whom were major stars in their own right. These relationships often started innocently enough, 2 co-stars sharing an intense scene or bonding over the long hours on set. However, in the pressurized environment of Hollywood, with fans and studio executives breathing down everyone's neck, the lines between real and real emotions could blur. Tracy found an emotional escape in these liaisons, although guilt and a sense of moral conflict often followed. One of the most talked about pairings was with Loretta Young. Both devout Catholics, they supposedly wrestled with a profound sense of wrongdoing over their mutual attraction, further complicated by the fact that Young was determined to preserve her public image as a wholesome figure. Their affair sparked during the making of Man's Castle and allegedly continued under a cloak of secrecy. Similar patterns unfolded with Joan Crawford and Ingrid Bergman, where on-set chemistry spilled into real life. In each instance, Tracy's religious upbringing clashed with the reality of his impulses, feeding into the cycles of guilt and shame that fueled his drinking. Yet none of these relationships compared to Tracy's enduring bond with Katharine Hepburn. Their working relationship started with Woman of the Year, where audiences fell for their comedic timing, verbal sparring, and simmering undercurrent of attraction. Off-screen, it evolved into a deep emotional connection that lasted over 25 years. The two became Hollywood's most legendary couple, both on film and in private life, though that private life was complicated by the fact that Tracy was still legally married to Louise Treadwell. Because of his staunch Catholic beliefs, divorce was off the table. Thus, he and Hepburn maintained a discreet yet well-known relationship, that insiders accepted, but the public largely witnessed only through rumors and subtle cues. Hepburn's devotion to Tracy became particularly evident when his health began to fail. She put her own career on hold to care for him, stepping in as a companion, nurse, and emotional anchor. Industry folk admired this loyalty, and some even envied the profound bond they appeared to share. Still, theirs was not a life of complete serenity. Tracy's bouts of drinking and mercurial moods created storms that Hepburn had to weather. On at least one occasion, an intoxicated Tracy reportedly lashed out physically, leaving her in tears. Yet Hepburn recognized the war he was fighting within himself. He was a man who could deliver lines as if every syllable were weighed for truth, but whose personal script included chapters of denial, secrecy, and regret. Nevertheless, these conflicting dimensions arguably enriched his acting. The tension coursing through his off-camera life seeped into his portrayals of complex, troubled characters, making them resonate more deeply with audiences. It's an irony that the sorrow of his private self may have fueled the genius of his professional self, raising the question, would we revere him as deeply had he not lived on such a razor's edge of death? By the late 1950s, Spencer Tracy's body bore the signs of prolonged stress and repeated damage: heart disease, chronic insomnia, heavy smoking, barbiturate use to regulate sleep and mood, and the lingering after-effects of his on and off struggles with alcoholism. Though he tried to moderate his habits, the cumulative strain took its toll. Medical professionals warned him repeatedly to reduce his workload, but stepping away from acting entirely was never an option he seriously entertained. Acting was not just his job, it was his lifeblood, a refuge from the torments that plagued him. Faced with deteriorating health, Katharine Hepburn made the difficult decision to pause her own rising career so she could take care of him full-time. She moved in with him, oversaw his medication, ensured he ate as regularly as his precarious appetite allowed, and shielded him from the demands of studio executives or press inquiries. Many in Hollywood saw this as an extraordinary gesture of love and loyalty, especially in an industry known for superficial relationships and fleeting partnerships. Despite the warnings from doctors, Tracy agreed to star in one more film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, directed by Stanley Kramer. The film tackled the then taboo subject of interracial marriage, with Sidney Poitier portraying the African-American fiancée of Tracy's on-screen daughter, played by Katharine Hepburn's niece. It was a role that demanded gravitas, warmth, and moral conviction, all of which Tracy summoned from some wellspring of final strength. His health was so precarious that the production scheduled his scenes first, each day, allowing him to leave after a few hours to rest. Crew members commented on how fragile he looked, yet he remained unwavering in his focus. This was a project close to his heart, a statement about tolerance and humanity that resonated with his personal beliefs. The film wrapped a mere 17 days before tragedy struck. On June 10, 1967, Spencer Tracy arose early in the morning to make tea in his kitchen. The exact details of those final moments remain sparse, but according to Hepburn's account, she heard the sound of shattering china, followed by a heavy thud. Rushing in, she found him collapsed from a massive heart attack. He was gone before any help could arrive. In the aftermath, Hepburn faced another poignant decision: whether to attend the Catholic funeral arranged by Tracy's wife, Louise. Out of respect for Louise and Spencer's wish to avoid scandal, Hepburn chose not to appear at the service, staying away to let the Tracys grieve in peace. It was a subtle yet deeply significant gesture, emblematic of her understanding of the complicated circumstances that had shaped their lives. Family, friends, and a pantheon of Hollywood luminaries gathered at the Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church to pay their last respects. Then followed the hearse to Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, where he was laid to rest, a final chapter for a man whose cinematic influence continued to grow even after his death. Legacy and closing thoughts. In total, Spencer Tracy received 9 Academy Award nominations, winning 2 in consecutive years, a rare feat that put him in the same company as legendary actors like Louise Rayner and Tom Hanks, though in different eras. His approach to acting, marked by minimal rehearsal and profound spontaneity, introduced a new level of realism to Hollywood. Future generations of actors, from Marlon Brando to Daniel Day-Lewis, cited Tracy's unforced authenticity as an inspiration. Moreover, his willingness to tackle complex moral themes in films like Judgment at Nuremberg and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner left an imprint on Hollywood, nudging it towards more socially conscious storytelling. Yet for all his accolades, the personal side of Spencer Tracy remains equally compelling. Here was a man torn between devout faith and irrepressible desire, between a stable marriage and a profound connection with another partner, between heartfelt concern for his children and a near constant fear that he was unworthy of their love. His struggles with alcoholism serve as a stark reminder of the tenuous balance between creative brilliance and self-destruction, a cautionary tale for anyone enthralled by the glitz of Tinseltown. Indeed, many in Hollywood still whisper about the Night of Terror stories, episodes of drunken rampage that threatened not only Tracy's career but sometimes even his life. However, it's crucial to remember that these darker chapters didn't define him in totality. Just as he wrestled with guilt and doubt, he also demonstrated immense generosity. Stories abound of Tracy quietly helping struggling actors, paying hospital bills for ill colleagues, or intervening when a stagehand's family fell on hard times. Though he was not one to advertise these deeds, they came to light through the grateful testimonies of others, illustrating the compassion that underscored his sometimes tormented soul. In the end, Spencer Tracy stands as a quintessential example of Hollywood's golden age, radiant on the surface, weighed down by hidden burdens behind the curtain. He charmed millions with his authentic, deeply felt performances, while privately grappling with a complexity that might seem more fitting for a film noir anti-hero than the smiling tuxedoed star audiences saw in promotional photos. And yet, in a twist of fate that only a genuine artist could manage, it was precisely those internal conflicts that enriched his screen presence. Every flicker of self-doubt, every glimmer of hope, every flash of intensity in his eyes spoke to truths more universal than any script could convey. Word. And that's the riveting tale of Spencer Tracy, an actor whose brilliance on screen was matched only by the intricacy of his personal life. From his groundbreaking performances that defined an era to the private battles that shaped his darkest hours, Tracy remains a towering figure in Hollywood history. He left behind a treasure trove of compelling characters, from earnest priests and paternal guides to morally conflicted judges and warm-hearted patriarchs. Each role bore an unmistakable stamp of authenticity that has inspired generations of performers. Ultimately, Spencer Tracy's duality, the man who could stand firmly for compassion and empathy in his films while struggling behind the scenes with doubt and guilt, makes him an enduring figure. He shows us the two faces of Hollywood success. On one side, the glamour of trophies, applause, and front-page acclaim. On the other, the emotional turmoil that can corrode even the brightest star from within. Yet despite the scandals, heartbreaks, and secret nights of terror, he refused to relinquish his craft, and in doing so, he pushed the boundaries of cinematic storytelling. His 2 consecutive Oscars and 9 total nominations mark him among the most celebrated actors in American film history. But numbers alone hardly capture the magnitude of his legacy. From the moment you watch him in Captain's Courageous to his final screen presence in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the evolution of his artistry is as engrossing as any real-life narrative. He taught future generations to value truth in performance, to let emotions emanate naturally rather than forcing them. The authenticity he championed paved the way for method acting and for film as a medium of deeper human connection. Spencer Tracy's influences also spilled beyond the screen. The philanthropic work of his wife Louise Treadwell, particularly in founding the John Tracy Clinic, continues to touch lives to this day. The gossip columns once had a field day with his entanglements, yet those who actually knew him often describe a man of profound empathy and sincerity. His bond with Katharine Hepburn, sealed not in legal vows, but in decades of mutual support, remains one of Hollywood's most cherished love stories, capturing the imagination of countless fans who see in it both romance and sacrifice. We hope you enjoyed this extensive dive into the life and legacy of Spencer Tracy. If his story resonated with you, or if you learned something new about this Hollywood titan, please let us know by liking this video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-curtain glimpses into cinema's most fascinating icons. Spencer Tracy exemplified the human capacity for greatness and frailty, reminding us that even those who seem larger than life grapple with struggles as real as our own. Yet his films continue to stand as beacons of masterful storytelling, ensuring that his star, tarnished though it may have been at times, still shines brightly over the history of American film. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, where we'll explore more untold stories, behind-the-scenes drama, and the timeless artistry that shaped Hollywood's golden era. Until next time, this has been your in-depth look at Spencer Tracy, an icon whose presence on the silver screen remains as powerful and